Thank you very much, Mr. Nek. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very happy, very pleased to be here, to be among you. It is a good time of India-Indonesia bilateral relations. There has been occasions that I've said that we are entering one of the best periods in 70 years of bilateral relations. Now, why do I say one of the best periods? A number of indicators in terms of trade numbers. Last year was the highest ever. It was 20 billion according to Indian statistics, 18 billion according to our statistics. Number of visitors both ways was the highest ever. Almost 500,000 Indians visited Indonesia, and over 40,000 Indonesians visited India. In terms of interaction at the political level, the number of visits, my president was here in January. He was here before that in December 2016. Prime Minister of India visited Indonesia 2 months ago. The ministerial visits, 1 year I have been here, I have received my ministers, Minister of Trade, Minister of Health, Minister of Defense, Coordinating Minister for Political Security and Human Rights, Coordinating Minister for Maritime Cooperation, and a number of other ministers, members of parliament, and heads of agencies. So overall, in terms of the economics, trade, political engagement, this is manifesting as well in terms of how we are going to give meaning to India, Indonesia being maritime neighbors. We have set up a joint task force to explore the connectivity between Sabang and Andamans. Sabang, as you know, is the port, northern tip of Indonesia, Sumatra. We are going to undertake the first ever naval exercise, Air Force exercise. We are looking at how to expand coordinated patrol between Andamans and North Sumatra.
When is the exercise?
The exercise, it's under talks. The exercises are under planning. So the meeting today, earlier, they also talked about the details of these exercises. And we are in 70 years of bilateral relations. Let me just mention that we are going to celebrate 70 years of bilateral relations. So India gave its full diplomatic, we established full diplomatic relations at the end of 1949.
So next year we are going to see?
Next year, yes. But the logo has been unveiled by the Prime Minister and the President. In a few weeks' time, we will start using the logo in our stationaries, in our Twitter and other media channels. So those are more or less the how we are, how it is manifesting itself. Also, another point you mentioned about the region, Indo-Pacific. It is not always the case that our two countries have the same regional outlook, but today we do. The statement of Prime Minister Modi in Singapore at the Shangri-La Dialogue, it was very similar. It would be very familiar to Indonesians. So we look at the region in the same way. So I think I'll leave it at that, and maybe we can continue with further discussions. And then would this continue be on the record, or?
It's on the record, actually.
On the record, okay, that's
so
fine.
that you can.
Yes.
Most of our reporters and correspondents would like to write something on that.
Yeah, but if you would like to say something that's a little more revealing and you wanted to be off the record, we can, we would abide by
You
that.
can just let us know which part is
Okay.
off the record.
If there's something very interesting you'd like to share and you don't want to be on the record, we'd be quite happy to abide by those.
All right. We'll start on the record,
Okay.
On the record.
and then we'll finish off the record.
So can we start interaction, or
Yes.
you want to say something more?
Uh,
You want to say okay? Then we start with Ranjit.
Tell us about the ongoing defense cooperation between India and Indonesia. What more are in store? What more plans are being chalked out to further deepen defense cooperation?
We are starting from, we have to be realistic. Defense cooperation, we are in the process of really laying down the groundwork. So, for example, we've been holding the coordinated patrol between Andaman and North Sumatra already over a decade, but that have not expanded, except now. Now it's starting to expand into naval exercises as well as the other services of the armed forces. We are at the level of building comfort and confidence between our services. This is something also very important. So we are looking at, other than exercises, how we can exchange information better, how we can join train or send our member of the services to train in the others. So we are looking at expanding this. Training participation in our respective schools have been long-standing, but we are looking at how to expand this. I think the requirements of both countries, as well as the regional outlook, would require that India and Indonesia have stronger cooperation. We will be an essential building block in an Indo-Pacific regional architecture. So we need to build this. On the defense side, this is something fundamental. It's also something high profile. So by saying that, I meant to underline the importance of the soft side as well in this bilateral relations. So things like connectivity, infrastructure, even trade, people-to-people connectivity, more students exchanges. By the way, the number of Indonesian students in India at the moment is very low. It's I think it's less than 150.
Oh.
So we talked about the long history, the long cultural roots. You need to rediscover that, and we need to build something new into the future. And India and Indonesia are neighbors, but somehow geography is a matter of mindset. So we need also to adjust the mindset to proximity.
Nilo.
I remember when we met last year, we talked about trying to increase the connectivity in terms of air connectivity and direct flights. Has something advanced on that? Has there been are direct flights now happening between Delhi and Jakarta?
Not yet. I'm hopeful. I think I am more hopeful today than I was then. In the sense that there are, I think there are more concrete thoughts being given into it. I've held discussions with my side on this, so I can say that I'm very hopeful.
Considering that 500,000 Indians travel there, isn't it a little weird that there isn't direct connectivity?
We have, at the moment, we have, I think about 17 flights from Indonesia to India per week. None from India. But now I've been getting positive signals from one of the carriers of India Now it's a matter of finding slots. But at the same time, I also should mention that the Air Services Agreement, the two leaders, when they met, they agreed that this should be upgraded, should be renewed. So hopefully in the next few months, a meeting of civil aviation officials will happen. But you're right, 500,000, that's almost like 1,300 per day. Yeah. And most of them are going through third countries. There may be a headwind in this context because of for airlines to expand because of rising fuel prices. But the other side of it, Indonesia, the Indonesian currency rupiah, like the Indian rupee, have both weakened. So for our people to go to US or Europe may be more expensive now. So it makes better sense to visit each other.
Aruni.
Commissioner, the first India-Indonesia interfaith dialogue will be held in Indonesia in October this year.
Yes.
So what do you think are the pages, what kind of pages can India take out from the Indonesian book in terms of counter-radicalism?
Well, it's both of us have something to share in terms of how we manage pluralism while we strengthen tolerance, religious harmony, interreligious harmony. And both India and Indonesia, we are countries that are quite successful in managing in a democracy, in a democratic setting, in managing pluralism. Both countries have a complex ethnic makeup. We also can learn from each other on how we, respectively, what we are doing to strengthen this. At the same time, we can also have a message that we send to the international community, how we manage pluralism and tolerance. Out of this dialogue, we can also have something concrete come out in terms of what we should be doing internally, what we should be doing with our youth and others. So this kind of message, and it's an ongoing cooperation. In Indonesia itself, we have over a dozen or more of such kind of dialogues, and we've been undertaking it for since the early 2000s.
Ambassador, you mentioned Sabang. Are we talking about a commercial development of the port, or is it a naval base as well?
Actually, the sectors is quite broad. The port is there. It will be open for port visits by navies. But we also want to develop Sabang because it is a free trade zone. And India and Indonesia, we are talking about how to further develop infrastructure there, develop facilities, looking at possibility of hospital, an international hospital there. So these are the aspects that are being looked into. However, we are still working on what the specific projects will be.
Those projects related to defense infrastructure? Or?
Nothing particularly on defense. But ports would have broad use, obviously.
Was there any question of any Indian company managing the port?
The port would be it would be an Indonesian port.
Yes. Management?
The management would be, for now, I have not heard talks about which company would manage the port. I'm assuming it would be the Indonesian Port Authority. I have not heard if there are any talks about having mixed ownership or management. That I have not heard. But I can always come back to you on that.
Tripti, after that.
Ambassador, could you give us some idea about the presence of Indonesian companies in India? Are they inspired by Modi's Make in India?
Most of them are in the food processing sector. Companies like Garuda Food, Mayora, Inbisco, the name here is Inbisco. There's a biscuit company down in Chennai, Nabati. There are joint ventures for vegetable oil refining. So the numbers are quite limited.
Any idea of what total number of Indonesian companies in India?
There are those that are investing, opening up facilities. There are those that are opening up marketing office. So various kinds of presence. My 20 ya? Belasan. So a dozen or two.
Yes.
Do you think the RCEP will be signed this year? What is Indonesia's final take on it?
We are hoping and we are pushing.
Is India kind of the stumbling block?
Well, I think it's negotiations that everybody has to be part of, and everybody would come to the negotiating table with offers and requests or demands. So I think it's a matter. We are hoping that this year everything will come together. I understand that our trade negotiator, who is also the facilitator of the RCEP negotiations, I understand that he's quite optimistic.
Because you don't get a sense that India is going to back out.
No.
As of now.
No. Do you?
There are reports now saying that India may back out. So.
Okay.
Just supplementing on the RCEP thing, are there any, I was hearing that perhaps they are,
Loud.
I was hearing that perhaps in the RCEP talk that there could be some mechanism where India could opt out from RCEP for some time while it is looking at, and so that there's a signing of the RCEP by the end of this year, as
Without
everybody has been talking about. Is there a possibility of that?
Well, to be honest, I have not heard about it. If that is true, it could also be some way of, let me put it this way, I'm not sure whether that's a part of the negotiations or it's actually a substantive position taken.
Preeti.
Ambassador, I would like to ask you, what is your country's take on China's BRI, Belt and Road Initiative?
We have a number of Chinese infrastructure projects in Indonesia. We don't always see it eye to eye on which are BRI, which are not. But they have a number of infrastructure investment. In Indonesia, when it comes to infrastructure, it's business to business relations. So government does not get involved. Does not provide guarantees as such. So in terms of our position has always been in the past few years, has always been for greater connectivity. So any efforts to enhance connectivity would be something that we support. Now, when I talk about connectivity, I'm not talking only about regional connectivity, but for us, what's more important is our own domestic connectivity. Because if you look at in connectivity within Indonesia itself, maritime connectivity, that is already at least 1/3 of connectivity of East Asia.
So you do not see it as the hegemonistic aspirations of China?
I would not put it in those terms.
What would be your terms?
Greater connectivity is something that we would support, coming from wherever. But our priority would be our domestic connectivity, and this would support regional connectivity. In fact, we are one of the priority with India is creating that connectivity. India-Indonesia connectivity, Andaman's Sabang connectivity. We want to have we meaning the embassy, and I think your embassy in Jakarta would also agree, but I'm not talking on their behalf, that we ought to work for greater maritime connectivity with ports like Chennai, Kolkata, which we don't have as yet.
Thank you.
Lester, as part of this connectivity thing, are there any plans for Indonesian firms to help build, let's say, tourist facilities in Andamans or something like that? Are there Indonesian firms bidding for such?
The discussions have touched on these matters. So the first meeting was held in Aceh a couple of weeks ago. So the next meeting should be held in the Andamans. The business people from Sumatra should go over. I think the Indian side should also, I think more information from the Indian side about investment in Andamans or other islands like Havelock. The Indian side would give explanation, and then discussions could be more substantive. They talked about how to trade more directly, what could be the supply-demand factor between the two sides, the infrastructure needs.
Excellency, what are your views about South China Sea? Because you are dealing with Pacific as well as Indian Ocean also. And the sea lanes have to be free from any kind of interference. In that context, the expansion of Chinese in South China Sea is a construction of, and various atolls actually, or they have defense construction. How do Indonesia looks at the whole aspect of South China Sea and the Chinese, presence in that area, and also claiming the area?
Our view is there are a few dimensions to our view. The first is that this is a situation that needs to be managed, and therefore within the ASEAN-China context, we are working on a code of conduct. Progress has been made on this, and we look forward to further progress. On our part, we are not part of the South China Sea claimant states. We are not part. The Indonesian territory that's touches upon the South China Sea, which is Natuna Islands. It is Indonesian. There are no disputes about that, and we don't see any dispute over waters off of Natuna. We have not heard any valid legal arguments to claims on North Natuna waters. And then there is the legal side. The decision of the arbitration tribunal 2 years ago. It made clear that legally speaking, claims can only be made on the basis of features, the high tide features. That the features in the Natuna Seas, none of them are islands. Moreover, because of the nature of these features, none of them can have exclusive economic zones or continental shelf. So the decisions by the arbitration tribunal, it gives a clear legal foundation for any further discussions about the status of the South China Sea. And let me just add that the law of the sea, it's something that has been present very little in India-Indonesia relations. India is a large maritime country. Indonesia is an archipelago. We both have keen interest, not only in UNCLOS, but in further development of UNCLOS, in how UNCLOS will address new issues. Both of us are interested. We don't have much discussions amongst us on how do we respond to new issues, how do we jointly develop UNCLOS in a way that we consider as the right way, in a way that is consistent with the existing practices and understanding.
Just to follow up on that. Are the Chinese respecting the tribunal's decision on Natuna Island, since they have included Natuna in the 9-degree channel? So
the last time I heard, they're not. That's not their position. I don't know if since this morning they've changed.
Sanjay?
Your Excellency, there's a question that flows out from your introduction. You said for the first time India and Indonesia are on the same page on the issue of Indo-Pacific. So why do you say for the first time? I mean, do you think that there's some events that happened in the last few years that brought the two countries together, or there is something more to it?
It could also be just a matter of indifference, that our priorities were elsewhere, but we are looking at the same regional construct now. In the beginning, early 50s, we both of us coming out of colonialism, both of us were ambitious and confident that we could influence the international system, that we could together build a regional construct. Now we are coming back to that again. So we use the same terms like open region, inclusive, freedom of navigation and overflight. A construct directed against no countries. So these are more or less the same terminologies that we are using.
Nothing to do with the same view on China, for instance?
Sorry?
I said nothing to do with the two countries sharing the same view on China?
I'm not sure if I can frame my view in such a way. India being a neighbor of China, Indonesia not a neighbor of China. In India, because of its history, the land border, all of that. So I would say that both of us are interested in developing an architecture that is peaceful, that is where every country can contribute in a positive way. A region where we can manage what I call the prisoner's dilemma, the security of one creating insecurities for others. So this is a situation where we manage. I think we may have, I cannot speak on behalf of the Indian side, but we may have shared view that this region, all of us can through dialogue, norms and institutions, we can work to ensure security for everybody, where we can avoid accidents from happening. Oh yeah, and by the way, among the shared views, also the centrality of ASEAN in building this architecture.
Milo.
Sir, you said right at the outset that trade has been booming this year. The Indian side said it was 20 billion, you said it was 18 billion. How come there's this shortfall of 2 billion? It's kind of, it's not a small amount.
To be honest, I have not looked into the methodology of the statistics, but it may be that some exports go through a third country, and then coming to the other is calculated as, it could calculated as Indonesian or maybe calculated as Singaporean.
Oh.
So it may be that.
Okay, nothing more interesting than that.
No smuggling.
Mahendra. And Devi Rupa. Mahendra.
What has been the experience of Indonesia and India within ASEAN? The FTA, that's one part. The other is that Singapore and others have a much higher profile than Indonesia. Although potential of India and Indonesia, as you just said, is so high. So where has been the shortfall and how? Why?
Well, I think it's a matter of the demands that is being made on you, especially domestically, but also from a regional context. I think in the past, it could be that the demands would place priorities on in other directions for the country, for India and Indonesia. But I think in the past year or so, there is a convergence of factors that would make the other important for India or Indonesia.
India and Indonesia have always been neighbors, close, long before they became independent. I mean, so in ancient times, the physical situation has been there. Why? What is driving it now? And is it the China factor, or what is it that is sort of bringing about this cooperation?
There is the domestic demand. There is the need to address international economic situation that is making some regions more close, more nationalistic. So both of us see the need to have an international system that is open. Both of us want interaction among the great powers that would remain peaceful. I think that's what we want. We want to avoid accidents. We want to avoid a downward spiral situation.
Devi Rupa, you can ask.
Sir, another Indo-Pacific question. One is, the next month I believe ASEAN is going to have a meeting on revising
Sorry?
its... Next month I believe ASEAN is going to have a meeting on revising its vision on Indo-Pacific. Can you explain a bit what is going to be the outcome on our looking paper or some kind of vision paper, or it's just another step in finding its place in the Indo-Pacific? And also I want to ask you, when all the countries, I mean India, US, Australia, Japan, all the main advocates of Indo-Pacific, they always talk about the ASEAN centrality. But what does it mean in practical terms? I mean, is it that when they're talking of ASEAN centrality, that ASEAN should be a party to having, devising the rules of operation maybe in this area. But ASEAN countries are not really very active in Indian Ocean, organizations like IONS or IORA. So what does it practically mean when they talk about ASEAN centrality?
ASEAN is the only regional institution that provides a platform for everybody to come and sit, be comfortable, and to discuss issues in a way that's comfortable to all. So that's why ASEAN is the ASEAN mechanism that is useful. There is no alternative to that. But the foundation to that also is because it is Southeast Asia, is where all countries want to ensure that that Southeast Asia remains open for everybody, and that everybody supports this status for everybody else. So I think there's that mechanism part, but there is also that political security part. So that's why everybody supports Southeast Asia that is open for everybody.
And next month's meeting, what will be the
Loud.
next month's meeting?
Speak in the mic after this. Please.
It basically is part of the process, like you said, how to develop further understanding among the ASEAN countries, and how to work together in promoting this within the broader context within the East Asia Summit, leading to the summit in November.
I think last week there was a conference here on the Indian Ocean, in which you and the ambassador of Vietnam took part in the ISS premises. I was told actually sometime last week. There's a conference.
Oh yeah, South China Sea.
South China Sea. Okay.
Yes, the Society of Indian Ocean Studies invited us to talk about South China Sea.
So what was deliberations in that conference?
Well, it was a very dynamic. It was a very dynamic discussion. My own view was what I said before about the legal side and about the importance of India and Indonesia cooperating in the development of UNCLOS. I did not stay for the whole meeting, but from the summary I received from Professor Ghoshal, I think it was the discussion basically. Various people conveyed their view on the situation in the South China Sea.
What were your views actually?
Well, my views is that South China Sea is obviously very strategic. All countries have an interest in it, and that the tribunal had laid out a clear legal foundation for further discussions. So the 9-dash line is not recognized as a basis for any claims. That features in the South China Sea are not islands, therefore shall not have EEZs or continental shelves. And that on this basis, there are no disputes when it comes to Indonesian islands or Indonesian waters.
Except China doesn't really abide by that, hasn't really adhered to it and doesn't accept this particular tribunal decision. So isn't that a bit of a problem?
Well, China is a party to UNCLOS. And its views its legal views would one way or another find a way to be UNCLOS consistent. Oh yeah, I also mentioned, talking back to what I said last week, was that all countries should be party to UNCLOS, especially major countries. because you cannot have a major country not being party to it, but then expect others to honor it.
Arul.
Could you explain this, this India, Indonesia, Australia trilateral? Give us a perspective on that.
And just an additional question to that. What is Indonesia's view about the Quad, in India, Japan, USA, Australia kind of quadrilateral?
There are actually two kinds of trilateral dialogue. One is it began a few years ago. It's called the TDIO, Trilateral Dialogue in the Indian Ocean. That was at the more technical level, 1.5 format. And so it's the talks are basically India, Indonesia, Australia in the Indian Ocean. And the second one just had only begun, when was it? Early this year, last year? So, and the next one will come up soon, I believe, September probably. They will talk various issues of common concern between the three countries. The Quad is, we are not part of the Quad, so we are not privy to what the discussions were. My understanding is that it's a discussion at quite an early stage. It may be, but I'm not an authority on this. It may be they are exploring the areas of cooperation. So it's difficult for me to comment on what the Quad is. I'll leave it at that.
Do you want to become a member of Quad?
I mean, the Indonesian view of the Quad. Are you wary of coming together, or are you kind of indifferent to it? That's the point I was trying to make. The Indonesian view about the Quad.
Well, I'm not sure if all Quad members even have a similar view on what the function of Quad would be. As to your question, no, Indonesia is not looking to join the Quad.
Sanjay.
So something which is less serious than what is being discussed at the moment. Now we're going to have Asian Games in your country. How many Indians are going there to watch? And secondly, you were telling me something about partnership between, or some relationship that you're trying to forge with Taj Mahal and your own, some heritage relationship. Can you just talk about it?
I think India is going to send a large contingent, at least as
officials, but
yeah.
Tourists or people who are going to watch.
No, I have no information on that. But now that you mention it, I'll keep an eye on it. And to the second matter, recently we signed what we call a twin heritage project. So between the Taj Mahal and Prambanan Temple. So this is a cooperation
Taj Mahal?
Prambanan. To promote jointly or exchange experts on preservation. So it's basically a cooperation to jointly promote preservation and other fields. And maybe down the road we'll create a forum for all World Heritage sites to sit together in a forum, talk about these issues.
Indonesia and India has any kind of cooperation so far as piracy is concerned, maritime? Are we looking at that, or is there already a cooperation?
I mean, the coordinated patrol is intended for issues like that. So piracy, humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, search and rescue, and so other related issues. But we want to expand more so the navies can talk better to each other, establish a more a better channels of communications.
Any question by anyone? You?
I just
So,
had a supplement.
yeah,
You said
Farooq?
issues of common concern on the trilateral. Now, what would those issues of common concern be? Is it again taking into account the Indo-Pacific region, or?
I think they would talk about issues common concern. It could be the Korean Peninsula. It could be others. It's to exchange views on how we respectively view such issues. It's not directed at any particular country. If we can go off record.
Yeah, please.